What separates great leaders from the rest isn't just intelligence, strategy, or even vision. Those things are important, yes, but they're not the core. They're not what sustains a leader through crisis, conflict, or chaos. What lies at the foundation of all true, lasting leadership is something far more powerful and far more personal emotional mastery. Before you can lead a team, a company, a movement, or even a family, you have to lead yourself. And that starts with the way you navigate your emotional world. Most people are living in reaction. They let circumstances dictate how they feel, and in turn, let their feelings dictate what they do. If something goes wrong, they get frustrated. If someone disappoints them, they get angry. If they feel uncertain, they pull back or lash out. That's not leadership, that's survival mode. Leadership begins the moment you realize your emotions are not facts. They are signals. And the mastery of those signals, not their suppression, but their interpretation, is what allows you to stay centered when others collapse. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't become a prisoner of what you feel. Imagine being able to stay grounded when your team is panicking, being able to speak calmly when everyone else is shouting, or to act decisively when the path forward is unclear. That's not luck. That's emotional conditioning. It's a choice to train your nervous system to serve your goals, not sabotage them. The most effective leaders are not the ones who avoid stress or pressure. They're the ones who can maintain emotional control in the face of it. Now let's get something straight. Emotional mastery is not pretending. It's not putting on a smile when you're breaking inside. It's about getting honest with what you feel and then deciding what that emotion means and what to do with it. It's asking, is this feeling guiding me or misleading me? Is this useful right now? Do I want to stay in this state or shift into a higher one? The truth is, if you're not directing your emotional state, someone else is. A client, a partner, the economy, a social media comment, someone else is pulling the strings. Leaders cut those strings. They step back, assess, breathe, and then choose how to show up. Because how you feel determines how you lead, and how you lead determines what you create. Emotional mastery is especially critical in moments of decision. Why? Because emotion amplifies everything. If you're in a fearful state, you'll exaggerate risk. If you're in a resentful state, you'll push people away. If you're in a desperate state, you'll settle. But if you train yourself to access clarity, courage, and calm, even in the heat of the moment, you become unstoppable. People follow certainty, not arrogance, not ego. And certainty begins with emotional command. It's also about energy. Think about the last time you walked into a room and could feel the leader before they said a word. That presence. That wasn't charisma. That was emotional control. That was someone who had done the inner work. Because let's face it, when your energy is scattered, stressed, or reactive, no amount of intelligence can make up for the disconnect people feel from you. So many people are focused on strategies. They want better marketing, better systems, better habits. And yes, those matter, but strategies collapse under the weight of emotional chaos. You can have the best business plan in the world, but if you fall apart the moment something doesn't go according to plan, it won't matter. You won't follow through. You'll shrink. You'll shift. You'll retreat. But when emotional mastery becomes your base, when it's your default operating system, everything changes. Your conversations shift. Your relationships deepen. Your vision sharpens. You stop being reactive and start becoming responsive. You stop waiting for motivation and start choosing momentum. The game is internal. The battlefield is within. Until you learn to lead yourself through frustration, doubt, fear, anger, and overwhelm, you'll keep chasing surface level wins. Emotional mastery is the key to leading not just from the head, but from the heart with resilience, clarity, and unwavering focus. Every person experiences stress. That's not unique. Stress is part of life, part of growth, part of the human experience. But what truly separates those who rise from those who fold isn't the presence of stress, it's the response to it. Your ability to lead, to influence, to inspire, and to perform is shaped, tested, and revealed in how you respond when pressure hits. Leadership isn't forged in moments of comfort. It's forged in fire. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who seem unshakable. Do you think they live without stress? Absolutely not. They live with it, walk through it, and often carry more of it than most. The difference is how they respond to it. While others freeze, they find motion. While others complain, they commit. While others focus on the problem, they orient themselves towards solutions. That's not a trait you're born with. That's a skill you build. Stress is not the enemy. The lack of capacity to navigate stress is. When you get hit with a setback, when someone betrays your trust, when a plan falls apart, when the stakes are high and the margin for error is razor thin, those are the moments that define your leadership. Not when everything is running smoothly, not when everyone's clapping, but when no one's looking, when the pressure's on, and when everything in you wants to shut down or lash out. That's when real leadership begins. Stress is a magnifier. It exposes how much you've trained yourself to think clearly, to breathe, to stay connected to your mission even when your mind wants to run in 1,000 different directions. It's in those moments that your leadership is either validated or exposed. If you haven't conditioned your nervous system to remain steady under strain, stress will hijack your mind and distort your choices. And when your choices suffer, your leadership suffers. Most people don't realize how easily they hand over control to stress. They let a delay turn into panic. They let a difficult conversation turn into a spiral. They let someone else's mood dictate their behavior. That's not leadership. That's reactivity. The world doesn't follow reactivity. It follows composure. It follows certainty, and certainty comes from knowing that no matter how loud the storm gets on the outside, you can create calm on the inside. There's a split-second window between what happens and how you respond. That gap determines everything. Leaders who thrive under pressure aren't superhuman. They're just highly trained in that gap. They've built a habit of pausing, assessing, and making a decision that aligns with their values, not their fears. They don't suppress the stress. They channel it. They use it as a signal, as fuel, as feedback, not as a master. You don't lead best when everything is easy. You lead best when everything is hard and you stay grounded anyway. Your calm becomes contagious. Your strength becomes stabilizing. Your clarity becomes direction. And when others are losing themselves in the chaos, your response becomes the reason they follow you. Not because you had all the answers, but because you had control of yourself when it mattered. Stress will visit you in many forms: uncertainty, pressure, rejection, overload, failure. It will hit your schedule, your ego, your body, your plans. But stress itself isn't the determinant. What matters is whether you absorb it, reflect it, or redirect it. When you train yourself to shift from panic to purpose, from emotional chaos to centered presence, you elevate your leadership in a way that's unmistakable. The workplace doesn't need more people who can simply execute under perfect conditions. It needs people who can adapt under pressure, people who remain resourceful in the middle of disruption. And this kind of resilience isn't built by chance. It's built through a deliberate choice to view stress not as a threat, but as an invitation to level up your focus, to refine your decisions, and to step into leadership with maturity and strength. How you lead under pressure is how you lead, period. Because stress doesn't change you, it reveals you. Your response in those high-stakes moments becomes your reputation, your standard, your brand. If you can't lead yourself through stress, you'll never be trusted to lead others through it. The teams that win, the businesses that thrive, the lives that grow are always built around people who don't wait for the world to be calm. They become the calm. One of the most dangerous myths in personal growth and leadership is the idea that we must follow our feelings. The world romanticizes emotion like it's the ultimate compass. We're told, do what feels right, trust your gut, go with your heart. But what happens when what feels right in the moment leads you straight into a pattern of regret, sabotage, or limitation? What happens when your heart is conflicted and your gut is confused? If we're honest, we've all had moments where feelings missiled us, where they amplified fear, where they pushed us into silence when we should have spoken, or drove us to speak when silence would have been strength. The truth is simple and liberating. Your feelings are not commands. They are not facts. They are feedback. Emotions are messengers, not masters. They are data, raw input from your internal system, trying to tell you something about how you're perceiving your environment. But they should not be followed blindly. Great leaders, powerful individuals, and emotionally intelligent people do not obey every feeling. They observe, they interpret, they analyze, and then they decide whether to act or adjust. Every feeling you experience comes from a pattern of thought. If you feel fear, it's because your mind is perceiving a threat. If you feel anger, it's because you're interpreting that something unjust has happened. If you feel anxiety, it's usually because your brain is forecasting a future you're not sure you can handle. But in all of these, the emotion isn't the problem. It's the meaning you've attached to it. You can't lead yourself or others effectively if you treat every emotional impulse like it's truth. What separates those who grow from those who get stuck is the ability to pause when emotion arises and ask, what is this really about? What triggered this response? Is the story I'm telling myself accurate? Or am I projecting fear, insecurity, or past wounds onto the present moment? Emotional maturity is about creating that gap between stimulus and response, between feeling and action. When a leader receives data, they don't automatically act on it. They study it, verify it, question it, and only then do they create a strategy. Emotions should be treated the same way. They are inputs to consider, not orders to follow. The person who acts purely from emotion becomes a puppet of their internal chaos. The person who interprets emotion with awareness becomes a master of direction and decision. Think about how much damage has been done in people's lives, not from external forces, but from impulsive emotional decisions. Words said in anger that broke trust. Opportunities passed up because of fear. Relationships abandoned because of pride. Goals abandoned because of temporary frustration. None of those actions came from rational thought. They came from obeying feelings as if they were law. On the other hand, think about the leaders who inspire you. Are they the ones who flinch at every emotional wave, who crumble in discomfort, who lash out at every challenge? Or are they the ones who feel it all, but choose deliberately? They don't deny emotion, they harness it. They don't ignore it, they filter it. They are emotionally agile, which means they feel deeply but act wisely. Emotional intelligence isn't about being emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally literate. It's about understanding the difference between a useful emotion and a destructive one. It's about asking, does this feeling move me closer to who I want to be, or does it anchor me to who I used to be? If you don't question your feelings, they will shape your reality by default. And default is rarely the path of growth. In moments of conflict, stress, or uncertainty, your emotions will speak loudly. But volume does not equal truth. Your body might scream, retreat, when what you need to do is push forward. Your heart might say, protect, when the moment calls for vulnerability. Your mind might warn danger, when in reality, you're standing at the edge of breakthrough. Feelings will rise. That's human. But you have the power to decide which feelings get your attention and which get your action. Leadership requires clarity, and clarity cannot exist when every emotional ripple becomes a tidal wave of reaction. You must learn to pause and parse, to listen without submission, to recognize that emotions, while valid, are often based on incomplete stories. When you treat them as data, neutral, informative, and subject to examination, you reclaim authority over your decisions, your direction, and your destiny. Leadership doesn't begin when someone gives you a title. It doesn't start when you get promoted or when people start calling you boss or manager or coach. Leadership starts the moment you decide to take full responsibility for your own life. The moment you stop outsourcing blame, the moment you stop waiting for external change and choose internal ownership. You cannot lead others with any integrity if you haven't first learned how to lead yourself. We live in a world that is obsessed with influence. Followers likes impact, visibility. But none of that is sustainable or meaningful if your internal world is in chaos. Leading others is not about control. It's about example. It's about congruence. You can't ask for discipline in your team if you haven't cultivated it in yourself. You can't demand clarity if your own mind is clouded by indecision. You can't preach resilience if you crumble under your own pressure. People don't respond to what you say, they respond to who you are. And who you are is shaped by how you lead your thoughts, your habits, your reactions, your energy, and your beliefs when no one else is watching. Leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being aligned. It's about doing the difficult internal work consistently so that when the time comes to guide others, you're not speaking from theory, you're speaking from embodiment. People can feel that. There is an unspoken energy that radiates from a person who is self-led. They don't need to dominate the room. Their presence speaks louder than their words because they've earned their own respect. And when you respect yourself, others can feel it. You set a standard without having to declare it. To lead yourself means you take control of your internal state. You notice your patterns. You observe your triggers. You correct your course before it derails. You keep your word to yourself, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. Because if you can't lead yourself through boredom, through setbacks, through fear, through fatigue, how will you ever lead someone else through theirs? There's a brutal honesty required in self-leadership. It demands that you look in the mirror and stop making excuses. It demands that you confront your inconsistencies, your procrastinations, your self-sabotage. It's not glamorous. There's no applause for it. But it's the foundation of every powerful, authentic leader. Until you take full command of your own behavior, mindset, and emotional state, your leadership will always have cracks, no matter how polished your words or strategies might seem on the surface. One of the greatest lies is that leadership is about authority. The truth is, people follow alignment, not authority. They follow vision that's backed by character. They follow courage that's backed by humility. They follow someone who can walk through the fire first, not someone who delegates from a distance. You cannot ask anyone to go where you're unwilling to go yourself. If you want loyalty, lead with consistency. If you want excellence, lead with discipline. If you want trust, lead with transparency. The hardest part of leadership is not guiding others. It's staying true to the standards you set for yourself when nobody's holding you accountable. Because real leadership means you hold yourself to a higher standard even when it's invisible. When it's 500 a.m. and your alarm goes off, leadership is either built or broken in that moment. When you're faced with the opportunity to cut corners, your response determines your integrity. When fear whispers, play it safe, leadership answers with action anyway. Before you lead anyone else, ask yourself, can I lead my thoughts when they turn negative? Can I lead my attitude when things go wrong? Can I lead my words when emotions are high? Can I lead my attention when distractions pull me off course? Until the answer is yes, your leadership is still in training, because leadership is not granted. It's earned first with yourself. Every time you choose growth over comfort, truth over image, responsibility over blame, you lead yourself. And with each of those choices, your capacity to lead others grows, not by force, but by resonance. People trust leaders who lead themselves, not because they have all the answers, but because they've proven they can navigate challenge without collapsing. They've proven they can live the standard, not just speak it. The gap between powerful leadership and poor leadership is not intelligence. It's not charisma. It's not even experience. It's the ability to choose purpose over reaction. In every situation, you have two options: to be driven by your purpose or to be hijacked by your emotional reaction. The people who make the greatest impact in this world are not the ones who avoid challenge or eliminate emotion. They're the ones who rise above reaction and make decisions rooted in clarity, conviction, and mission. Every day you're presented with triggers. Someone says something you don't like, a deadline moves, a plan gets disrupted, you get a message that rattles you. And in that instant, your nervous system floods with emotion. That's the moment of truth. That's where leadership is tested. Not when the plan is going smoothly, but when something unexpected pushes against your composure. In that space, most people react. They lash out, withdraw, defend, attack, panic, or shut down. Their emotional reaction becomes the authority of the moment. And once reaction takes over, purpose is no longer in control. But the strongest leaders don't react by default. They pause, they breathe, they create space between stimulus and response. In that space, they reconnect to their purpose. And then from that anchor, they choose their next move. That's the difference between a powerful leader and a reactive one. One is ruled by vision. The other is ruled by circumstance. When you're leading a team, a business, or even a family, people look to you not just for direction, but for stability. If you allow yourself to become emotionally volatile every time something shifts, people stop trusting your ability to guide them. But if you remain rooted in purpose, you become the grounding force in the storm. That doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you become robotic. It means that your purpose is stronger than your temporary discomfort. It means your response is chosen consciously, not dictated automatically. Reaction is easy. Reaction is immediate. Reaction doesn't require awareness or discipline. But purpose requires intention. Purpose means you take the long view. You ask bigger questions. You zoom out. You remind yourself of what you're building, what you're protecting, what you're standing for. You don't let a momentary emotional surge pull you off course from what matters most. And the more you train yourself to do this, the more magnetic your leadership becomes. Because people instinctively trust someone who consistently chooses purpose over drama. There's a myth that great leaders are always calm or that they never feel frustrated or triggered. That's not true. Great leaders feel everything, but they've developed an internal system to filter their reactions through the lens of purpose before taking action. They don't pretend to be unaffected. They just refuse to be ruled by what's fleeting. That's a discipline. That's a choice. And that choice gets made every day in moments large and small. Purpose-driven leadership means you choose how you show up regardless of how others are showing up. It means you don't mirror chaos, you neutralize it. You don't match anger, you disarm it. You don't react to pressure, you rise through it. And that ability doesn't come from talent. It comes from training yourself to ask what's the mission right now? What matters most in this moment? What version of me will serve that mission? When you let reaction lead, you shrink. You make decisions to protect your ego or to escape discomfort. You operate from defense instead of creation. But when you lead from purpose, even your setbacks become strategic. You don't lose time justifying your feelings. You use your time aligning your actions. Purpose brings coherence. It brings unity to your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And with that unity comes presence, power, and direction. Leadership in its highest form is not about controlling others. It's about mastering the self. And self-mastery is found in those split-second decisions when your nervous system is flaring and your purpose whispers, hold steady. That whisper will never shout over your reaction. You have to train yourself to listen for it. You have to build the habit of returning to it again and again until it becomes your default. Because the world doesn't need more reactive leaders. It needs grounded ones, focused ones, purposeful ones. And that starts with choosing moment by moment to lead from your mission, not from your mood. Leadership isn't a role, it's a responsibility, first to yourself, and then to the people who look to you for direction, strength, and truth. At its core, the ability to lead powerfully comes down to mastering what happens inside you, not just around you. Emotional mastery, calm under stress, the discipline to interpret feelings rather than obey them, the courage to lead yourself with conviction, and the wisdom to choose purpose over reaction. These are not just leadership skills. They are life skills. They shape how you show up in every room, every conversation, every decision. Because in the end, leadership isn't something you turn on when others are watching. It's something you live by when no one is. The world will throw uncertainty, challenge, and chaos your way. But your power lies in how you respond. If you want to lead others with impact, influence, and integrity, it begins with leading yourself with intention. That's the shift. That's the standard. And that's the skill that will change your life forever.